All right. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so we are recording. My name is Callie Patrick, and I'm a sleep wellness coach with a journey into health. So glad to be with you here today, both on the YouTube channel and also on the podcast. I'm here today with Dr. Nicole Perrotte, who is a board certified physician, a mother, and entrepreneur, and she's become a great friend of mine. So I'm happy to have her talk with me today. Nicole has been practicing internal medicine and specifically hospital medicine for 15 years. And she's been involved in quality projects as well as administration during that time. And in 2015, she had twins. And that added several more layers of work, as she describes it. So we're going to talk about that. And it looks like we've both had an experience with burnout and trying to do a lot of things. She was introduced to mindfulness, which was a great help to her. And she discovered coaching and had a very transformational experience with that. And Nicole is currently with me in additional coaching training, and she's looking to become a coach herself and to help other professional mothers find their voices and find their way again. So nice to have you, Nicole. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Callie. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I am a sleep wellness coach, and I work with adults, and I work mostly with people who are, I would say, around the Gen X age group, and maybe slightly younger, slightly older. And I bring to those coaching calls, my own experience, my training, and I am a mother to two cats. And I have a partner, right? So I can
Right.
certainly, when sleep challenges are an issue, or self-care challenges are an issue, I can certainly talk to, both from my training and my personal experience, things about like sleep partners, things like sleep divorce, when you spend some time outside of the bed and from your
Right.
other. I certainly am aware how disruptive pets can be sometimes to the sleep. We have a new kitten, as you might know, so the cats
Right.
talking to each other all night and getting adjusted. But kids, this is not a topic I have personal experience with, and I do talk to women, who are around our age, who are struggling sometimes with, how do I help my kids fall asleep and stay asleep, because this impacts the sleep of myself, my partner. They're crawling into the bed at all hours of the night. They're asking for water,
Yes.
so if you can shed some light on some of the things that you've done with your twins and with your children, that I'm sure many people would love to hear about that.
Sure, sure. Yes, it's been quite a ride. I mean, they often tell you when you're pregnant to try and get all the sleep that you need right now, because you're not going to get any sleep for many years to come. And
Right,
they're
as if you
quite
could prepare,
right.
sleep it all and then like not sleep for a long time and then
Exactly.
again like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just bank it, you'll be okay.
yeah, sure.
But it's so true. I mean, there's a lot of sleep deprivation. And once you get past that initial infant stage where you're constantly up and there is that sleep deprivation, and you can actually start creating a routine to get them to bed, you can bump into several different problems. And oftentimes, the recommendation is around 6 months, try to develop a sleep routine so that way they're able to fall into bed, go to sleep by themselves. But what I've discovered, and my twins are complete opposite, there's one who loves to sleep and there's one who doesn't like to sleep as much. And so I've been on both ends of the spectrum, where you have kids who wake up multiple times at night, or who don't want to go to bed because they're hot. They want another glass of water, another glass of milk. There was a shadow in the room. I mean, you name it. Some sort of excuse to stay up a little bit longer and just delay the whole process. And so what we came up with recently was some charts to help incentivize them to go to bed and stay in bed until the morning. But part of that means you need to have a routine. You need to have a bedtime routine. And that would involve usually things like dinner at a reasonable hour, avoiding sugary food and drinks. So that way you don't have them revved up and ready to run all over the house at 8, 9, 10 at night. Um, a bath, usually calm them down quite nicely. And then bedtime stories, which they love. I mean, they're quite happy to sit for that. But sometimes there's a challenge in just keeping them sitting because depending on the story, then they would want to run around and have fun. So that in itself, you need to also monitor because that is something that could become another source of play, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have a good bedtime routine, as I mentioned, avoiding sugary foods, back time, something like bedtime stories, maybe some snuggle time, and then ideally lights out and you're in bed.
Mm.
And some of the things that have helped us combat the room is hot, I need more water, I want to get up at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning because I heard a noise, there was a shadow. We've introduced a chart, and it's a reward chart, and each kid got their own chart, and it essentially spelled out the bedtime routine for them. And they were able to get stickers for each step of the way. Yes, I brushed my teeth. Yes, I went to the bathroom. Yes, I had a bath. Yes, I read a bedtime story. I stayed in my bed all night. I did not call out. I got up after a certain hour.
Those
And
sounds
the
very
first week,
detailed.
very
It's very,
detailed. I mean, I searched really hard on Amazon to find those specific items because I really wanted to get something that nailed each part of the bedtime routine so that it would become ingrained, they would be used to it, and no more negotiation of it's hot, it's this, it's that. If you do break one of the rules, well, rules, so to speak,
Mhm.
then these are the potential consequences. You're not going to get a star.
And how does that play out if you have twins? I must, are they identical or not, or
The fraternal boy girl.
total? Yeah. So one likes to sleep, one doesn't like to sleep. How does that play out with, their dynamic? And, if one gets a sticker and one doesn't get a sticker, is that helpful or is it more challenging?
It has gone both ways. And so the girl tends to be competitive, the guy not so much. And so it has gone both ways where he would achieve a full days or even there was one point he had about 4 days worth of full stickers. And I thought my daughter was going to go apoplectic. I mean, she could not believe that he was achieving all those stickers.
So was that more motivating for her or was that
It
just,
was. It was.
okay, good. That didn't just get her angry at her brother.
No, after the initial shock, then she decided, okay, I can do this too. And so she got more motivated to get her stickers and then establish a better routine.
Mm.
And so we've seen that play out where there's been some motivation, there's been a little bit of being upset, but overall, they're more compliant with the routine, so to speak. I
Mhm.
mean, granted, it's something that takes time, and as they get older, it gets better because as the kids get better, my kids are almost 5, they just tend to fall into bed and sleep better overall and not disturb you as much. So
Mhm.
overall, it has been a good thing, and it has been wonderful to see them adopt a routine and look forward to, okay, you can have a treat at the end of the week if you achieve all of these stars on all of these days. It's been
Right,
quite a
right.
motivation.
I was thinking as you were describing this bedtime routine that it doesn't sound far off from what adults maybe should consider doing before bed, right? We
That's
don't want to
correct.
eat too soon close to bed and we don't want to have sugary snacks and we want to, I mean, a hot bath or a warm bath is a very nice way, or even a shower
Hmm.
to, to relax yourself. And what really struck me too is the content of the story, right? Which I've had adult clients reading, it's whatever they're reading, even if it's an actual hard copy book and it's not on the computer or on the phone, right? The story itself can be stimulating.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
it's interesting that we're still big children
Yes,
sometimes.
we are. We are.
Yeah, and the stars on the chart is, it's a very interesting dynamic when you have the two children who are in different places and they get to see how each other copes, but also, sort of having that unbroken string of successes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oftentimes as adults, we like to see, okay, I've checked this off
Mm-hmm.
today and now don't break the string.
Yes,
Right.
yes, it
So
never gets old.
no, no. So it's still very applicable. It's very interesting. Have you and how have you seen this this routine with your kids affect your own sleep and your own self-care?
So it's been good because then you start feeling, okay, I could also spend some time at the end of the day taking care of me as well and just decompressing from the day, making sure that I also provide some self care for myself, whether that is reading some sort of book that I'm reading, spending time with my husband, just decompressing, spending some time in a bath, just relaxing. Those are things that I could now do as opposed to, oh, somebody said it's hot. There's a light in my room. There's a shadow in my room.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
I get that time back to then spend time on myself.
mhm. So what do you think? So even it sounds like there are things that might still come up for your children, right? There might be a shadow, right? There might be a noise, right? They might hear you. Do you have any insight into how they cope with that kind of behind the doors without coming to you and coming into the bed or waking up again?
Well, ever so often something would happen, and someone may get sick once in a while, or someone really truly decided, I'm so thirsty, I really do want some water, so I'm gonna give up a star. And so when they come out, I would say, okay, you're not gonna get a star for this. And I
Mhm,
would say, it's okay. I just really need to get a glass of water, or I don't feel well, or I thought I heard something in my room. In which case, you're like, okay, let's go address it.
mhm,
And whatever it is, hopefully it's something that could be addressed quickly. Usually it is. If
mhm,
it's being thirsty, simple, small glass, very small glass of water.
mhm.
And if there is a concern about noise, it's like, okay, there's nobody here, there's nothing here, there are no monsters here. You're
Mhm.
good.
Right, right, right.
Okay, back to sleep, lights off. Don't want to see you or hear from you again until morning.
So that's interesting. It sounds like it's also teaching them how to make good decisions,
Hmm.
right? When is it worth trading in a star, right?
Right,
When is it urgent enough that I can't handle this myself and need some help?
right. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Interesting, interesting. So I do want to go, it sounds like everything in your house is very like like works like a well-oiled machine there.
Work in progress. I wish it was so seamless all the time, but it's work in progress.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier, which is around 6 months, right? You developed the sleep routine. So I have two questions about that. Did you start doing that very consciously around that age? And before that, when it was like, okay, just expect to get no sleep, how did you cope with that? As a new mom with newborn
Right,
twins or very young twins, when you couldn't use a sticker chart or anything to help them to help them get to sleep.
right. And so prior to that, but sleep was something I treasured. And I would sleep like a log and enjoy my sleep all the time. And usually the medical recommendation is somewhere around 6 months is where you could actually start getting them on a sleep routine per se. And there are several different methods that people recommend doing it, including crying it out, which is one option. And that is one that I use that it worked pretty well for us. But even then, there were so many different regressions, teething, being ill with ear infections. Um, they were just I mean, at that younger age, they're a little bit more, it was harder to stay on the routine all the time just because of little things that would come up here and there. They would have a growth spurt and you would have some regression again. So there were little things that would come up and you'd have regressions. But it was always just a matter of getting them back on track and expecting it expecting those regressions to go away as time went by. Prior to 6 months, tried to get them on a routine in terms of making sure that everyone got up around the same time for feeding. But that in itself, I don't think it went as well as I would like. I think it was just a lot of chaos and a lot of deprivation of sleep.
Mm,
And one of the things I always tell, I'm part of several groups where um, of um, of multiples, And whenever someone say they're expecting and they're like, I don't know what to get, I always put up my hand and say, whatever you do, make sure you get a night nanny, no matter the cost. Just get a night nanny. It will make the difference between night and day,
And
because
what
that
is
is
it?
one a night nanny. So someone who will come and they will,
Oh, an actual person.
mhm,
Ah, I
they
see.
will. I mean, 2, 3 days of the week, ideally 5, 6, 7, best case scenario, but at least a couple days of the week where you could actually sleep and they would help feed the baby, burp the baby, change the babies, and let you get some sleep, as opposed to 7 days a week, week after week after week, trying
Right.
to stay on top of that and running sleep deprived. It is just such a disastrous place to be. And
See,
so that,
my mind went right away to it being some sort of device or,
no, actual person.
a toy or something, right? Not like an actual person, right?
An actual person.
Is that something that still, given the pandemic and situation we're in right now, is that still something that people are doing and is available?
Oh yes, oh yes. And of course when you're know that we're quarantined and I think everybody sort of have to make choices that work for their family
Mhm.
and trying to figure out who to include in the quarantine, so to speak.
Right, right.
Yes,
But
yes.
as we
Especially
know, sleep is such a vital thing for our
mm-hmm,
immune system and our stress levels and our overall health. So it might be, that trade-off might actually still be worth it, even in
mm-hmm.
this kind of strange time. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to share about, your experience with your kids and, you know, you mentioned crying it out and having that be a technique. I can imagine that some people are like, oh, well, I can't do that because I feel so guilty. Um, Guilt is a very strong thing. I think,
Mm-hmm.
for my clients who don't have kids, and then, when you have a little one, it might be hard to hear that. So,
Mm-hmm.
did you run into those feelings, and if so, how did you deal with it? And were there other options that you knew about and decided not to do that might be equally effective?
Right. And there are several other methods on the market, but a lot of people seem to feel that one works really well. And yes, a lot of people also feel that they do not want to do that. And you have to respect someone's choice whether or not they feel they can handle that baby screaming for an 30 minutes, an hour at a
Mm,
time, because sometimes that is unfortunately what it may go up to.
mm,
And yes, it definitely did tug at my heartstrings when I was doing it, but I kept reminding myself, and my husband, we kept reminding myself that on the other side of this, it will be much better. We'll have little babies who'll be sleeping longer, and the payoff will be worth it. And it only took maybe a week or less. It didn't take that long
mm, mhm,
because they quickly realized that you were not going to respond, and that if you and when you responded the intervals got longer and longer, and so they quickly realized that okay, I just need to soothe myself to sleep. So
mm.
the first couple of days were pretty hard, but then after that, I mean it's that period was a foggy time, but I want to say it took less than a week. I don't remember it taking very long.
Well,
I was pleasantly surprised how quickly it all fell in place.
yeah, and it's interesting because again, it sounds like it's training, right? You're training your children to soothe themselves, right? To perhaps preserve their energy because screaming
Mhm.
and crying takes up a lot of energy, right?
It
And
does.
and
It
maybe
does.
they'd like to have that for something else, or
Exactly.
you just feel exhausted. So okay, well, I'm going to fall asleep, right? But when I work with adults, we talk a lot about how to retrain ourselves, how to get out of bad habits, and
Right.
as children, this is the first training that they're getting, right? So
Exactly.
it's very important to start early,
Hmm.
and even though it might be uncomfortable for a short period of time, it sounds like the long term, the payoff has been very worth it for you.
It has. It
Yeah.
has. It has.
And what I'm also hearing is that you kind of ride the waves of, okay, we're doing well for a while and then something happens, right? A natural development, growing, teething, right? We
Hmm.
were good for a while and then, oh, this new situation arose and it's like, okay, so now how do we get back
Hmm.
to the routine? another situation arose. How do we get back to the routine?
Yes.
Right. So it
Yes.
was not like, okay, we hit a bump in the road, so now everything's thrown out the window.
No,
You
no.
went back very diligently,
Mhm.
going back every time. And that seems
Yes.
to have worked well for you.
Yes. I mean, you have to keep going back just to maintain that routine over time as natural developments happen or even just life happening.
Hmm.
And so you may take a vacation, it's a completely new environment,
Hmm.
and nobody wants to sleep. There's nothing happening. Nobody is sick. No one is growing. There's nothing except you're in a different environment on vacation for a week or so. And now
Hmm.
nobody wants to go to bed. And so,
Right, right. Speaking of which, we're coming upon one of those times, right? We have daylight savings,
mhm.
and that's happening next or this coming weekend,
Yes, this weekend.
right? So got to remember that, right?
I
So
know.
does that pose one of those bumps in the road for you with your kids, or is the time change not such a big deal in your household?
So it's interesting, and kids all respond differently. And but as an adult, I could say I feel the difference even with the time change.
Hmm.
But Um, the boy does well with it. The girl, she gets a little cranky with it. And
Hmm.
so because her pattern is she loves to sleep. And so I think she's a little bit more um committed to it per
Hmm.
se. She's more committed to her routine. And so it affects them differently, but we just have to go back to the same thing. And so for daylight saving time, we try to make some small modifications, knowing that the time is going to change. Start working with their bedtime a little bit, 15 minutes here. Well, start working about 3 days or so before the actual daylight saving times, and just start adding 15 minutes or taking away 15 minutes, depending on which way you're going.
Hmm.
And so that way you're trying to get back to where they should be after the clock changes. But we're not trying to aim to get back exactly to where they're supposed to be because it all depends on how they respond at the end of the day. They may be fine, they may need it, they may not need it. And so just trying to make a little bit of tweaks just to try and get them a little closer to the timing, but also just trying to write it out as the change actually happens and trying to stick with the routine. So this is the time we go to bed, this is the time we're going to go to bed, and just trying to keep everything the same, knowing that the first few days will probably be a little bit bumpy and
Hmm.
that it'll take easily a week to get back on track.
Hmm. Hmm. And again, I'm thinking, adults exact same way. I just wrote a blog on this where I said the same thing. Did the exact same thing. Honestly, published it like last week. Said
Okay.
start moving 15 minutes and expect that for about, maybe 1 to 3 days. You're not going to feel as energetic or as on
Mm-hmm.
top of things, and to build in more self-care during that time,
Mm-hmm.
and to be
Mm-hmm.
kind to yourself, because your system is adjusting to that.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, that's really cool. Great.
Yes.
Um, and anything else you want to share about your children and sleep, or advice for other people who might be struggling a little bit with these topics?
Well, I think it's important that you really develop a routine so that way you can also take care of yourself because once you're able to take care of yourself, then it's easier to deal with the changes and the bumps that come along with navigating little ones and getting them on a routine. So you have to make sure that your cup is full, so to speak, before you can start pouring from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And actually, so one other thing that I was thinking about, so it sounds like you created the routine for your children. Do you think that it would be interesting or useful to ever have the children say, oh, this is what I'd like to do before bed? I mean, I've read books about this where you give the children some choice and some autonomy, right? Where, okay, well, these are the things they say they want to do before bed, of course, within reason, right? But to give them a little more say. I know your kids are young, but do you foresee trying something like that, or experimenting, or do you let them make small choices like which pajamas to wear or which book
Hmm.
to read and things like that?
Yes. And so if, excuse me. And so, yes, they do get a choice for things like pajamas or which book to wear. And sometimes if a family friend is over, we're like, okay, you get 10, 15 minutes to say hi, spend some time playing with this person. And the timer goes on. When the timer goes off, we're
Hmm.
off to bed.
Okay, so they get an extension under certain circumstances, but
Hmm.
the routine still applies,
Yes.
and you use a timer for that.
Yes. Yes. Timer
Right?
is very important.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I know we could keep talking about sleep and
I know.
well-being, and maybe we'll do this again with another topic. This has been great. I always love talking to you and hearing your ideas, and
Same here.
it's been so interesting for me to hear, again, as someone who hasn't had to deal with, children affecting my sleep. It's hard enough to get your own sleep routine going and then have to deal with others, right? Um,
Right.
it was just very fascinating for me to hear the so many parallels.
There
Right.
are.
So,
Yes.
I think this is useful even for adults, who maybe not have kids to go, oh, yes, this is what I did when I was a kid, or I didn't have this experience as a kid, and therefore I haven't had the training,
Right.
right, of how to soothe myself to sleep,
Right.
uh,
Right.
which, we all could use.
You're right. Yes. Yes. No, this was wonderful. I enjoyed it. We'll definitely come back another time.
Great, great. Well, thanks a lot. And I will talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
Bye.